Hi everyone, hope you can hear me okay. My name is Eimear Owens from Santa Maria Public Group, and thank you firstly for joining Spice Hacks, which is our kind of our response in lockdown to what's been happening with spices and seasonings and how we can help educate and support chefs out there using simple spice hacks for everyday takeaways, convenience food, or in your kitchen. Some of you may know me from the market. I've been in the Irish market for 12 years, working with Santa Maria and spices. Now today we would love to have hosted this in our, we have a taste academy and a spice taste room in County Meath in Slane. And that was the original plan with Chef Network, but as we all know, things are a little bit different this year. So we're going to try and do this as best we can online. Please don't worry, you don't have to listen to me for the full half an hour, 45 minutes. We're going to split this. I'm going to introduce this, and then we're going to go over to Chef Barney, who is in our Milton Keynes Taste Academy. He's going to go through spices in hopefully a way that you won't have seen before. You can challenge us. You can ask questions on this, or if you have any feedback or questions for myself or Barney on spices or some of the spice blends, let us know. And we're not going to take up a lot of your time. I know sitting on a webinar can be tough, so but hopefully we'll make it nice and spicy and interesting for you. Hello from me. I'm going to take you through some spice hacks. I'm going to send you over to Barney then, about 1:15. And he's going to take us through black pepper, cinnamon, and a little bit of oregano. And then we've got a Q&A. And at any point, you guys ask some questions, let us know. And you may have seen from when you registered for this that it's a two-part series. So today we have on, obviously, and then the 23rd of November. So today we're going to focus on mostly the spice, the core spices, the products that actually go into our spice blends. Pepper, oregano, cinnamon being some of them. And then on part 2 on the 23rd, we are going to be actually working with the spice blends in a little bit more detail, cooking up some ideas, giving some flavour tips and some recipes and some 10 ways to use a spice blend, for example. So I suppose where does this all sit in this current climate? And I suppose the reason we wanted to do this is because, you know, I sell in the Irish market. We sell spices, and we've seen a huge increase on spice blends in the last, really since April, because, you know, they're one-pot wonders, as we like to say. And I mean, we know that kitchens are working on skeleton staffs, tight margins, tight budgets. And, you know, people have resorted to takeaways and to kind of change up their menu offer. And adding some spices and some different flavors can be like a flavor hug around your food sometimes, and getting loyal customers. So we've worked with Barney, our UK development taste creator, to work up some concepts on spice blends. And we have this spice hacks brochure, which we can send out to you after this. So just to kind of cover really where some of the big flavour trends are for any of the chefs out there who are looking at, you know, what to put in my menu, what areas to focus on. You know, we've done some insight. We work a lot with street food as well to see what are kind of the emerging trends coming out there. We know Indian is growing, and that can be like from a tikka masala to a more Malaysian type Indian dish, modern Asian. So the idea of dosas and different flavor holders, carriers, and different flavors of Asian cuisine are really growing. Plant-based, taking in different spices. As we know, plant-based food can be like a sponge for spices. It's a really good way to kind of pimp up a plant-based offer, is offering different flavor trends, flavor spices. Mexican, as a Tex-Mex supplier in the Irish market, we have seen like record numbers of sales of Tex-Mex products, jalapenos, fajita spice mixes, and tortilla wraps, for example, and even different variations of spice blends, briskets and things like that. And I think because Mexican is a very, you know, it's been in the Irish market for years, and we kind of know it, it's familiar, and that's something that people want at the minute. And to cook a Tex-Mex offer is very simple and easy to do. And we'll go through fajita in the second part of this spice hack series on the 23rd, just looking at different ways to use fajita spice mix, for example. Modern Indian as well as modern Asian, as I talked about, and American. So that's kind of taken in your barbecue. Barbecue is really, really growing at the minute as far as a flavour trend. We're seeing kind of regional types of barbecue as well. Louisiana, wet versus dry rubs, that's been really good. Smoky barbecue flavours. Using it on simple products like wings, marinades, rubs, cheaper cuts of meat, but pimping it up with some really nice like hickory smoky barbecue flavours. So those are, there's lots of emerging flavours, but those are the ones that we're seeing growing at the minute. You know, your curries, your barbecue offer, and your Mexican. And yeah, so I mean, what kind of dishes are they using with them? So, you know, if I kind of summarize these in the way that I kind of speak about food in the market, you know, it's curry in a hurry. It's a quick curry in a bowl. You know, it's a familiar, it's warm, especially in these months, but adding some really nice flavors. And it can be even like creating your own garam masala out of, you know, core spice blends, which Barney's going to show you some of, or it could be just taking a spice blend and then kind of using it as a base and then adding more flavor to it. But it also adds consistency if you're using it kind of a blend, especially anyone in workplace where you want the same flavor across different sites. We can't go anywhere without mentioning the spice bag. The spice bag has been huge since 2010. I think it really began in Ireland, and you know, people are used to the kind of Chinese 5-spice flavor, but there's no reason why it can't be an Asian, a Mexican, a Thai kind of flavor, a barbecue or Mexican spice bag. Wings, any way you like. We're seeing Korean wings, barbecue wings, Asian, Indian, you know, the simple, humble chicken wing done in so many ways. It's a good value offer. It's fun to eat, and people are really enjoying that. Seasoned rotisserie as well, so using different spice blends on rotisserie chicken, kind of the Nando style chicken. Again, using different flavor trends, barbecue, Asian, and then going into bowls, like mixing fusion foods, so using like Comac and Mexican, so kind of sweet, tangy, maybe sour flavors mixed in with a more heavier Tex-Mex flavor, and you can have like a flavored rice with a seasoned Mexican chicken, for example. Asian bowls using the likes of teriyaki, soy flavors, sweet, sticky flavors, really, really nice. And barbecue everything, you know, vegetables especially. January, we know we're going to have a lot of, you know, barbecue and vegetables and marinating them first. Well, that really works. And burritos and tacos. We've seen the burritos and tacos bars do really well through lockdown with the takeaway, the delivery offer, Just Eat offers. And again, that's, you know, seasoning meat. We've seen it grow some vegetarian in that as well. But again, that taco Mexican flavor really coming through there. I thought it was interesting just to, I talk about spice bags a lot because I do a lot of demonstrations for convenience and food retail takeaways. And I mean, I didn't actually know that spice bag was actually on Wikipedia. It actually has an Irish, I'm not going to try and pronounce, but you know, it's just interesting how it's kind of become the national takeaway dish. I'm very proud of it. Very good. So really what I want anyone who's joined this webinar to take away today is that we at Eimear are here to educate, which Barney will go into in a little bit more detail. I'm just giving you some trends, some oversights, but really also to look at spices in a different way. I mean, they're a pot that sit in our larders or our dry rooms, or even at home in our cupboards, and you know, they might have had like, you know, 10 years since you changed your cinnamon or your cumin. And you know, Barney will go into that in more detail, but we've worked with a lot of chefs who just, you know, so kind of the spice larder is kind of seen as the forgotten corner of the kitchen. So we wanna bring spices out, bring them to life. Eimear, we've been in the business for 120 years, you know, sourcing spices, selling spices. So we want to really, yeah, get people on our love for herbs and spices. And I think no better time now when people want warmth and flavour and consistency. Spice blends can really help you there. So we've got loads of hints and tips if you want to get in touch with us after this as well on different flavour ideas and, you know, tailored solutions around herbs and spices. And street food's a great one as well to work with because it takes in a kind of world cuisine. So we're kind of focusing on the blends as far as like South American, Mexican and Asian, but of course street food takes in world cuisine. We have a lot of insights on this as well, as we've seen some of the flavour trends. But really, you know, we have to keep in mind the current trends out there of, you know, no waste, sustainability. Spice blends are a great way of using up, you know, for making soups out of, you know, ends of carrots or cabbage or whatever veg you've left over, stocks, then adding some seasonings. So soups are a great way to, you know, adding a soup blend to, or a spice blend to soup works really well. You know, we want to support chefs out there with saving time, saving money, saving yourself really, and basically simplifying. So the spice blends that we're going to talk about next week as well will really simplify your menu. We're talking protein, you know, a stock and a spice blend to create a number of different dishes. Yeah, that's just what I was talking about there. So chimichurri, Kerala, fajita, some of these you might have seen. But really, before we can really take you into spice blends, we thought, you know, our partnership with Chef Network is really all about education, you know, and in the Irish market, we really feel like there's a place where we can really help chefs and people coming through catering colleges to really understand spices in more detail. I'm not sure anyone out there who's been to catering college has actually really covered have they got spices on their syllabus? Probably not from the research we've done. So we want to take this opportunity to show you spices in a different way. And the 3 spices we're going to look at is pepper. It's an everyday use spice. People use it, you know, shops, restaurants. You have it in cafes, you have it at home. And, you know, when I started working with Santa Maria, I thought pepper was pepper. Barney showed me differently. But yeah, it's really interesting, which Barney's going to take us through now. And cinnamon, obviously coming up to Christmas, you know, I think what a lot of people don't realize is there are lots of variations of cinnamon, different flavour profiles, some to suit sweet food, some to suit savoury food. And we wanted just to talk you through that as well. And then simple everyday herb like dried oregano. Where does it come from? Where is it sourced? We use this in chimichurri blend. We use it in our fajita. It's a very strong Mexican flavour. But again, there's different types of oregano. So I'm not going to steal any of Barney's thunder. So what I'm going to do now is hand over to Barney with the wonders of technology, who's in our Milton Keynes Taste Academy, where we make all our tortillas, but we also use it as our spice kind of area as well. So without further ado, over to Barney.
Hello, Eimear.
Thanks, Barney.
There we go. Seamless. I hope that works and everyone can see my screen. Eimear, thank you very much for the introduction. It's brilliant. I'm Barney. I'm over in the Milton Keynes office, as Eimear just said, in England. Just a quick background introduction about who's actually talking. So I've been working in the catering industry for around 15, 16 years, I suppose. 10 years on the front line chefing, and then about 6 years ago, joined Santa Maria as a development chef. So working with different chefs, different businesses, to really do some killer dishes for the menu and stuff. And then for half my time, so 3 years, I actually developed a training program on herbs and spices for Europe, for the whole business, and was lucky enough to visit some of the farmers, some of the growers of our herbs and spices around the world. So I've got to go to India to see the pepper growing, tarragon in France. So what I want to do today is show you some awesome pictures that either myself or the team have taken, so they're really quite reliable. And the mission is to show you why pepper isn't just pepper, like it says on the screen there, because not all herbs and spices were created equally. And what does that mean? I mean, it means that from a quality point of view, you can get some really bad herbs and spices, and you can get some really good herbs and spices. And we want to just see why that is. And obviously it's really important because herbs and spices are the things that add all the flavour to your food. So it's a little bit like saying to your butcher, beef is just beef, and it simply isn't true. So hopefully by the end of today, we'll have learned a little bit about actually where they come from, these spices, and why that's important, I think. And then obviously these are core ingredients that go into all our blends and whatnot. So at the start of the journey, 5 years ago, we actually went and spoke to chefs just to make sure that we were right in our thinking, really. Black pepper is used in almost every dish. It's the staple go-to spice. But what we realised is that there is a knowledge gap there. We don't actually know what pepper is, where it comes from, what makes good pepper, what makes bad pepper. So we started a journey to sort of change that. When we talk about good and bad pepper, we have to think about really, what affects the quality of that, where it comes from, and the processing methods and stuff like that. That's really important. So I just want to skim over a couple of these. So climate and location, they're heavily linked, but it's really crucial that any herbal spice grows in the best environment, really. If we think about basil, for example, or sage, they're grown all over the world these days. You can grow it in a pot on your windowsill, but will it produce the best quality basil? That's up for discussion, really. So our mission, we travel the world and we find the best quality herbs and spices. Furthermore, we can talk about varieties. So a really good example, which we're going to go through in more detail a little bit later, is cinnamon. There's 250 different varieties of cinnamon. So it's important that we find the correct ones that are suitable for, European cooking as such. Processing, again, that's a key element that we work closely with farmers and producers so that the herbs and spices are processed in the right way, whether it's a drying process or storage or transportation. And finally, form's a little bit more straightforward. It would either be a whole spice like cinnamon, sticks, or ground, but that can equally affect the end result when we're cooking with them. A ground spice would lose its flavour faster compared to a whole spice. Harvesting and experience, again, working closely with the farmers to ensure really that the produce is being harvested in the right way and at the right time as well, because if we're harvesting herbs and spices too soon, they haven't developed properly, they haven't gained enough flavour, enough size, stuff like that. So really important as well. And these are all things that we control quite closely. So what I want to do is just dive into pepper a little bit. It's the king of spices, and it's the most widely used, certainly in Europe and globally, alongside chili, I would say. So, but what actually is pepper and where it comes from, I think there's a bit of a knowledge gap there. So hopefully some of these pictures and some of the things I say, it's just going to open your minds a little bit. Because when coronavirus is gone, when the lockdowns are gone, pepper is still going to be there. It's still going to be the most used spice. So if we can use it in the right way, in the right qualities, we're going to get better food at the end of the day. So this is a pepper vine. Pepper is the berry of a tropical vine. It grows up supporting trees. The origin of pepper is India, and that's where we source our pepper from. It's got the best growing environment, really. These pictures, these vines are about 20 to 25 years old. They're very, very large, a couple of houses tall, really. And a pepper vine, we're looking at about 3 years before it will start producing any fruit. So these pictures we took in Kerala in South India, and it shows the pepper vine, and it shows how it's harvested as well. It's harvested by hand. A little Indian gentleman climbs up a bamboo pole and picks the berries that are ripe and ready to be harvested. So they're not clearing the whole vine. They might leave the ones that aren't ready, and that's really important. It's very time consuming. But a single picker can harvest 120 kilos a day, which is more than I weigh anyway. So, and there's pepper, fresh off the vine. As you can see, it grows in clusters, a bit like grapes, we can say. And this pepper has literally just been taken off the vine into a sack. Some of it is red, some of it's green. It's just a slight difference in the maturity of the corns. But that's straight off the vine and ready to go on to the next processing element. And there's a close-up of fresh pepper as you've never seen it before. Pretty cool as a spice geek anyway. And there's the cross-section of a single fresh pepper berry. It looks a little bit like a lime or something, but it's not. It's the pepper that sits on our tables. So the pepper has been harvested by hand, whacked into a sack, and then it's taken 10-15 minutes down the road to the farm owner's house, actually, which was fascinating. I took these two pictures, was lucky enough to see them harvest and process the peppers there. So yeah, 10-15 minutes, and that's really important as well, because we don't want the fresh produce sitting around for too long, because it's just going to deteriorate, it's just going to go moldy and bad. So on the left, we can see a gentleman, I think he's just about to lose his hand. No, I'm only joking. That machine there takes the individual pepper berries off of the stems, and so it runs the whole pepper through, and then it comes out loose. And then on the right there, we see the fresh berries being sun dried on the farm owner's driveway, and that's really important because black pepper is the fresh berry, and it's dried in the sun for around 10 days, and there's an enzyme in the berry that turns it to the really nice deep brown colour that we expect from black pepper. Two more pictures there of the processing going on. You can see there on the left the pepper berries coming out, and then they're putting them back into a sack so they can be spread out in the right place, ready to be dried. So it's really quite a local, hands-on task, I would say, and very, very quick as well. And that's important with all herbs and spices, is that the processing doesn't take too long because the produce deteriorates. If we talk about a herb or a spice, we don't want a fresh herb sitting out in the sun waiting to be processed. We want it to be done as quickly as possible in the most efficient way. So, pepper grows on a vine. This is really important and quite interesting. Green, black, and white pepper, it all comes from the same vine. It's simply harvested at a different stage and processed in a different way. The green pepper is harvested first. It's the youngest berries, and they're taken off the vine. The stems are removed, but then it's processed in a different way. We don't want it to be sun-dried, because then that enzyme activates and it goes brown. We want it to remain green, so we boil it or steam it, and that kills the enzyme, and then it can be brined or it can be air dried, depending on what end product we want. Black pepper is sun-dried, as we've discussed, and then white pepper is the most mature berries, and that is soaked in water, in clean running water, for a couple of weeks. And then what it does is it softens up the husk, and then the husk is rubbed, and then you're left with just the inside of the pepper, and that's white pepper. And it's as simple as that. This slide, we're back to black pepper. It shows a real close-up image of two different qualities of pepper. Now, these two peppers grow both in India, but part of the processing method, they're sorted by size. And on the left, we have a smaller, lower quality peppercorn, and on the right, a larger, higher quality peppercorn. And they have very different flavour profiles. So on the left, you can see it's very dark on the inside. And on the right, there's a really nice marzipan-like core, and that affects the flavour heavily. Just touching further on the grading of black pepper. This is a grading system for Indian black pepper. Malabar is the smallest and the lowest grade, and then TGSEB, I'm only going to say it once, but it's Telecherry Garbled Special Extra Bold, which is a bit of a mouthful, but it's really important because it's the biggest and the best peppercorns you can get in the world, in fact, and it produces the best flavour quality. So there is even if we're talking about just pepper growing in India, there's a grading system for the quality of that in itself. So really, the thing to take away from the grading of whole peppercorns is that size matters. That is crucial. As a business, we source all three of them, but they all have their different uses, and that's really important. Malabar, we source whole and then grind it in the factories, and that's used for blends and for whole packing of just ground pepper. TGEB, we source whole again, and that's sold whole, and that helps with the flavour because you want to crack a peppercorn as close to when you want to actually use it because the flavour disappears. And then the one on the right, that's in the grinders because that's the absolute best way of that's the best use for pepper is freshly cracked. So you're cracking this onto your plate of food or something. It could be on the table or on the pass in the kitchen, and this is going to deliver the absolute best quality flavour you can get. So we've spoken about what pepper is, where it comes from, the different sizes and stuff like that. I just want to go through the flavour profile of the biggest and best peppercorns you can get, because a lot of people think that it's just heat, when really, when you've got a good quality pepper, it's a very complex flavour profile. So what you should expect, and you can do this at home, you can do this, you know, in the kitchen when you're back, just grind fresh pepper into your hand, and just the heat from your hand will bring out the aromas, and you can just smell it. If you're feeling brave, you can try a bit neat, but you might start sneezing. So what you can expect is citrus elements, which is really good. It makes it a diverse product. Some grassy notes, some juniper. A lot of people don't realise that there are some juniper elements in it. Some woody, light woody notes. Tea tree oil isn't the nicest flavour. So in the bigger peppercorns, there's less of it. It's less of a dominant flavour. In your smaller peppercorns, your lower grade peppercorns, it's more of a dominant flavour. Some soapy notes, dried fruit and date, which is really nice because it lends itself to the sweetness. So actually, you can use pepper in sort of sweeter dishes as well, and alongside like game and stuff like that, and that will really complement the flavour. And then some earthy, deeper tones as well. So that's the flavour profile that you can expect from a high quality peppercorn. But just a real quick note on the pepper chemistry, so where the actual flavours come from and why it's important to crack it as close to usage as possible. It's because in the middle you've got your piperine, and that delivers a lot of heat. but the bigger husk on the outside, so on a bigger corn you've got a bigger husk, it holds all of the aromatic oils, like your citrus notes, like your juniper and your date flavours and stuff like that. So there is some science behind it. We do know what we're talking about. Touching back onto location, this is important. India is the origin of the pepper plant, the pepper vine, and that's where we source all of our black pepper from. Doesn't matter on the grading, on the form, it all comes from India. Vietnam, the pepper that comes from there is much hotter, it's much spicier. So that's not something that we want. And then in terms of Brazilian black pepper is regarded as fairly low quality, and it also serves mainly the USA, North America. This is just a video, it shows the application of black pepper, but in a sweet format. This is a dish that a chef that we work with called Simon Holston, he's got a star down in Torquay on the south coast, and he's been doing some dishes for us, and he's done a really nice dark chocolate tart, but it's actually got black pepper in it, and those flavours complement each other really nicely with the citrusy notes. So yeah, not just savoury usage, but sweet as well. So that's black pepper covered off. I just want to go through cinnamon as well, because cinnamon's a real hero for us. When we talk about cinnamon, it's important that we discuss that there's a varieties of cinnamon. So black pepper, there's really only one variety of the vine. It's just where it grows and how it's processed that makes it good or bad. With cinnamon, there's different varieties of the plant itself, and the two main ones, there's 250 varieties of cinnamon. But the two main ones, something that we call cassia, and then something that we call true cinnamon. You may be familiar with the pictures there, but they're very different in flavour profiles, both suitable for cooking with, but very different flavour profiles which will lend themselves to different dishes, I would say. So cassia versus true cinnamon. True cinnamon is native to Sri Lanka, and then it's moved over to Madagascar as well. They're the two top producing countries for true cinnamon. And then cassia is native to sort of Indonesia, Vietnam area. And we actually source as a business, we've got true cinnamon which comes from Madagascar, and then we've got the cassia cinnamon which we source from Indonesia. And I hope that you can see that. I'm probably quite small on your screens, but they're completely different. One you can just crush up with your hands, and the other one's rock solid, so it's much more of a robust spice. So some pictures that we took in Sri Lanka. So this is for true cinnamon, and you can see that the trees, they're actually really quite small, more of a bush, I would say. Much thinner trunks. But yeah, so the whole bush can just be chopped down, and then the outer bark is removed from the trunk, and then it's the inner bark, which is the spice that we've got in our hands today, and it's used in cooking. So yeah, you can see the top right that the whole trees have just been chopped down and ready to be processed. So this is in Sri Lanka, and then cassia is a completely different tree, still related, but much, much bigger. It's a massive tree, sort of 15 meters tall, with a big old trunk as well. And this picture on the left is really quite unique. It shows that the outer bark has been scraped off, ready for harvesting. And there's a couple of ways that it can be done. The farmer can chop down the tree completely and use the whole tree, or you can take bits off whilst it's still growing. It's important when we talk about cinnamon, actually, the different parts of the tree, they have different flavour profiles. So the bottom part of the tree, the bottom of the trunk, is really, really strong flavour. And then as we move up and get out onto the branches, it's a much milder flavour. And as a business, we work closely with the farmers, and what they do is we've agreed a specific mix of the different parts of the tree so that we get a really nice balanced flavour in the end. So this is a chip mix that the farmers produce from us from different parts of the tree, and it gets sent over to our spice factory, and we grind it ourselves. And that's important because some people might try and sneak in other bits that we don't actually want in the product to bulk it out, to be honest. So when we're sourcing a chip mix like this, we can see what's inside of it to ensure quality, really. And then on this side here, this is actually the true cinnamon mix that we get. So again, different parts of the tree which we grind ourselves in the factory, which retains the flavour again, and we can see exactly what we're buying, what we're putting into the product at the end of the day. So there we go. Some really nice pictures from Indonesia that we took, when we're visiting, doing the audits and the quality kind of stuff. So a close up of an Indonesian farmer taking the outer bark off of the cinnamon tree, ready to be harvested. Again, scraping the outer bark off of the tree by hand, which I wouldn't fancy doing. And this is up in the mountains of Indonesia. This is where we source our cinnamon from, in Indonesia, whole sticks or the chip mix itself, which will then grind down into ground cinnamon. And it's growing up kind of wild up in the mountains a little bit, alongside coffee and indeed pepper and cardamom. They'll all be growing around there. So we've spoken about the differences between the two plants. Really, it comes down to flavour profile, which is important for chefs, I would say. So your cassia, your more robust cinnamon stick from Indonesia, it's got much more of a peppery heat to it, I would say. So it's a little bit more suitable for curries and stuff like that, maybe rices. It's still got some sweetness, and then the complex other attributes as well, like nuttiness and stuff like that. But what I would say is that it's a lot more spicy, I would say. So, and then if we compare that to true cinnamon, when I smell true cinnamon, it just reminds me of the rhubarb and apple crumble. And it's not even got any rhubarb in it, but it's remarkable that the flavour that comes out of this spice. Very, very sweet and floral, with hints of vanilla and rhubarb, and less heat. So it's a much more delicate spice, I would say. I just want to touch on a herb. It's one of our hero herbs, oregano. Now, this here is the best quality oregano you can get in our assortment. We source 5 different types of oregano, and that's a good link back to the blends that we're going to discuss next time, because the 5 different types of oregano, they all have their uses and their flavour profiles. So some of them will go into the blends, and then some of them we will be using as pure herbs for your Italian sauces, or for topping pizzas and stuff like that. And I mean, this is so green and so pure that it can just be used as a garnish, really. And this one's from Chile in South America. And this is a picture of the the fields where it's grown. Nice high altitude, very pure air, which means that you don't have to process the herb by so much, because it's not had any pesticides sprayed on it. It's not had cars driving by polluting the produce, so it doesn't need to be processed so much, which retains the flavour, which is really important. And then from our South American oregano, these, they may look like dried herbs, but in fact they're actually the waste that we remove from the South American oregano. So we process it further in our own spice factory to remove all the nasty stalks, little bits of twig, some of the really fine ground bits of oregano that you don't want, so that you've really just got the most pure flowers and a little bit of leaf in the product itself. And what this does actually is it removes a lot of the weight from the oregano. So we've got our competitors here, which is 110 grams in this tiny little tub, and then if you compare it to ours, 65 grams, so basically half the weight. So it makes you wonder what is actually inside of here. Certainly not anything that you want to eat, I would say. Here's just an illustration of where we source our oregano from. It's not quite just as simple as sourcing a herb, as you can see. We've got different qualities, an organic quality, and then oreganos from Turkey and whatnot, which have a completely different flavour profile, which we use in our blends, especially Tex-Mex, because oregano is a crucial flavour in Tex-Mex cuisine. So we've reached the end of a little introduction to herbs and spices. Eimear, are you taking this?
Yeah, well, firstly, just like to say thank you, Barney. Can you hear me there? Yeah.
Yeah.
I suppose for all the people who've signed up for this, you can see why we call ourselves Spice Nerds now. We are quite nerdy about herbs and spices, and we wanted to do this workshop sort of in two ways, so that when we come next week, or the 23rd, to talk to you about, you know, chimichurri spice, Kerala spice, and fajita, that, you know, you guys are with us on this journey, that we are passionate nerds about herbs and spices, and into what we put into the dish, so that when you open that carton of fajita spice or chimichurri, that you understand how much love and passion and sourcing and thought has been into it. I suppose the way we look at herbs and spices in the market is like almost like winemakers or craft gin or craft beer, and that, you know, that finished product, there's a lot of work goes into how it's actually presented and sourced and done in the best way, that so that the food that you produce is done in the best way and it's got the best flavour profile. So what we'd like to offer is, for all of you guys and girls and chefs that have signed up for this event, if you email myself or Chef Network, we can email you right after this, and we'll send you a tub of either Kerala, chimichurri, or one of our spice blends that you can mess around with or play about with ahead of our next event on November 23rd. And yeah, and we'll have a little brochure on it as well, giving you some hints and tips. So I suppose we can open it up now for questions. There was a couple of questions that came through there, Barney. Maybe one for you on what is pink peppercorn. Do you want to take that?
Say that again, Eimear. Pink pepper.
Pink peppercorns, yeah. What are they? And yeah.
Yeah, so that's a brilliant question. Pink pepper isn't related at all to the black pepper vine that I've just presented. Pink pepper is a bush, a really big bushy tree that's native to America, and it just so happens that it's been given the name pink pepper, but it's got a really quite fruity, like red fruity flavour profile, and then the berries themselves, they're harvested and they're dried in the shade to preserve the colour. So yeah, so they're not related at all to green, white or black pepper, which all come from the same vine. It's a different product. They're very nice, but separate, yeah.
Yeah, it always surprises me, you know, when you get like a 5 pepper mix and you get something really strong like a pink pepper, because it's so perfumed.
Yeah.
The more robust, different flavour profiles of a like a black pepper, white pepper, green pepper mix. But yeah, if there's any questions, sorry, Barney, there's one here. In Mexican food, would true cinnamon or cassia be used? So in Mexican food,
I don't think cinnamon is a massive ingredient in Mexican food, I would say. But if you wanted to use it, cassia would be the way forward. So the more robust, stronger flavour. I think that true cinnamon would give too much of a sweetness to the dishes. And if you're doing like a long cooked, like carnitas or something like that, then the true cinnamon wouldn't stand up to that long cooking time. With the cassia, you know, it would be much more appropriate, I would say.
Although we do recommend the nachos, fried nachos with some vanilla sugar and cinnamon mix, and
chop up a tortilla and fry it, and you've got like a sweet nacho chip. Yeah, delicious.
Highly recommend that for Christmas. Yeah. And guys, if anybody's got any questions there, I think you can come off mute and ask a question or raise a hand, and Rebecca will take you off mute if there's any Q&A there.
Or perhaps type it in.
Or type it in, we've got some questions coming in there. There's some questions on Santa Maria barbecue sauce, but I can update you on that after, yeah. So yeah, I mean, like, we're 11:47 here, but what we will do is, as I said, get in touch. You can take my email down there, eimear.owens@powlig.com, and we will, if you get it in before maybe next Friday, and we'll have time then to send you out. Just give us an address of where you want us to send the sample of Kerala, chimichurri, or fajita to. And on the 23rd, we're going to be much more, Barney's going to be doing a lot more kind of foodie ideas, spice bag ideas, seasoning meat, fish, marinades. Don't look surprised, Barney. Yeah, always. Lots of ideas using the spice blends, and especially in this current lockdown time where we really want to help chefs with these one-pot wonders, nearly. We have another question there, Barney. What is the shelf life of whole spices? I mean, it's years, Barney. You can take that, but one thing I will say, I mean, where you can use whole spices, as Barney said, the better, because once you crack open a spice, the aromatic oils are released. That's why Barney showed you the grinder there. You know, where you don't have that option, spice blends are definitely brilliant in this current time. Whole spices tend to be more expensive sometimes, but they do have a longer shelf life. Barney, if you want to take on shelf life there and say cinnamon or pepper.
I mean, you're absolutely right, Eimear. The whole is generally, you know, going to deliver a better flavour for longer. It's easier to store. It's not going to oxidize. So, I mean, just the product I've got here, this has got 4 years on it, the whole telecherry pepper, and the ground has got 2 years on it. So there's a really good example, double the shelf life. And let's be honest, when you go into the realms of nutmeg and even cinnamon and stuff like that, if you look after them in the cupboard, keep them out of the sun, keep them dry, they're going to last for a very long time compared to ground, which you just, the whole time you're just losing that flavour. And that's why you know we source black pepper whole all the way to Sweden, where the spice factory is, so that it's even when we grind it for our products, it's ground at the last possible opportunity, really. Yeah.
Yeah, and I suppose that's interesting as well. If you look at the new spice packaging we have, it's much darker. Any chefs out there who've been using Santa Maria for years, it's been in the Irish market for a long time. You'll know that we used to have it in a beautiful plastic jar, but it wasn't the most sustainable. It wasn't a very clean product, so we moved into Tetra Pak, and we have a small window on it where the spices can be seen, and you can see if you need to refill. But really, the core reason for that was obviously sustainability, but also to keep the spices in the dark as much as possible, because it will affect the quality and the aromatic oils in it. We have a question there on spice blends shelf life. Again, keeping it airtight once you open it. On our spice blends on fajita, you could have up to a year, 2 years on it. Not so much as the whole spices, but as long as you keep it airtight. And we have clips as well that we put on our Tetra Paks to keep it as airtight as possible. And what I would always recommend is toasting it off if you can. If you're using a fajita, even just roast it slightly if it's been sitting for a while to bring the flavors alive. Roasting and heating spices will always add a bit more flavor, a bit more nuttiness to them, and bring them alive a little bit more, as well as through a slow cooking process. But doubling that effort is always good. Barney, you've been asked to speak about barbecue sauces and ranges. That's something we're definitely looking at doing with Chef Network. We would love to. I mean, this is very hard to do when we're not cooking for you. You're not smelling it, tasting it. But we let's hope next year we're back out. But I mean, barbecue. If that's something, if there's other things people would like to see, I think next week, if you join next week or the 23rd, you will. We will be going through much more the blends, obviously, and more flavors, and the chimichurri kind of touches on the barbecue that we've launched. So that might be interesting for Ash Lucy there. Yeah. So look, we're almost out of time here. What I would say is thank you so much, everyone, for joining. I hope it made you look at spices in a slightly different way. We think the story of spices is very romantic, really beautiful. You know, they are little berries that grow, or little leaves that grow, that we take and we actually make into these beautiful products for chefs to use. So we hope that even when you go into your own spice cupboard at home for Christmas, you know, look at your cinnamon, look at the date. In Sweden, we ran a competition to see we had a competition for people to send in their oldest spices in their cupboard. We'd some with like 20 years on it. So we challenge you. So if you find a really old one, let us know. But yeah, they're some of the oldest spices and ways of preserving food that we've had in our humanity. So yeah, we're pretty passionate about them, and we thank you very much for sharing that with us today.
Yeah.
So,
if anyone wants any more information on, you know, we've gone through this in a real snapshot, then yeah, get in contact with Eimear and we can send stuff over. Yeah, but thank you very much.
Okay, guys, thank you. We're just going to close it down now. Thank you. Bye.